This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications will now come to order. This afternoon, we have the Office of the Public Accountability. I think I'll spare us our speech. Everybody's heard it numerous times, and so why don't we just go ahead and have the presentation of your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Senator Uggan. If you could excuse me, I would like to read into the record because there is a budget request amendment that I'm proposing. Okay, all right. Dear Speaker Cruz and committee members, the Office of Public Accountability's FY 2019 initial budget request of $1,696,347 did not anticipate my resignation as of today, June 8th. As was mentioned in my message in the 2017 annual report released last week, I am resigning to run for Congress, a partisan office. I do this so that OPA will remain the independent, nonpartisan office it is. The one risk in my departure, the one risk in my departure is that the three women managers who and they're here with me today, Yuka Hechanova, my deputy, Llewellyn Terlahi. The other third lady is presently in Uganda at IDI expense, not at GovGuam expense. She was invited to participate in a program there, and she left Monday. Okay. The one risk in my departure is that the three women managers who collectively have over 40 years of OPA experience and over 10 certifications among them are in the unclassified service. As such, they can be removed by the next elected public auditor. This risk was highlighted in the draft performance measurement Franklin assessment report, due to be released the end of the year. To help preserve the institutional memory of OPA and give the next elected public auditor the flexibility and opportunity to choose his/her management team, I request an additional transition budget similar to what was accorded the current Attorney General when she took office in 2014. The transition budget would allow for funding of the three unclassified positions of Deputy Public Auditor, Special Assistant, and Executive Secretary. This additional cost would range from a low of $204,000 to a high of $234,000 if all three unclassified positions were certified public accountants. And there's an attachment just to see how the numbers were calculated. In addition, the newly elected public auditor should be afforded the opportunity to travel to attend certain conferences and seminars to interact and get to know fellow members and peers. These include the Pacific Association of Supreme Audit Institutions, better known as PASI, the National Association of State Auditors, the Association of Pacific Island Public Auditors, commonly known as the PIPA, the Government Finance Officers Association, to name a few. No travel funds were requested in the 2019 budget, therefore a travel of $15,000 is also requested. With a transition budget of approximately $219,000, this would bring OPA's amended budget request to $1,915,347. The initial budget of 1.7 did not add any new positions and represents the funding of all 18 existing positions. Should the next elected public auditor not be a CPA, there may be some small downward adjustment. In 2017, OPA issued 9 performance audits on topics such as GovGuam's analysis of leases, Department of Public Works heavy equipment, inventory and village streets, general services, agencies, procurement practices, the 12th Festival of the Pacific Arts, and the Department of Revenue and Taxation's gross receipts tax exemption. OPA also adjudicated 12 procurement appeals relating to the lease financing for construction and maintenance of public schools, which right now is in abeyance because it's currently been appealed to the Superior Court. Refuge collection trucks, LED luminary units, and photoelectric controls. GPA's renewable energy, which was the largest ever appeal heard before the OPA, and the Guam Community College's DNA lab construction, to name a few. In 2018, OPA issued 5 audits: the Guam Regional Transit Authority's procurement and billing, Guam Football Association's soccer stadium contributions, Department of Revenue and Taxation's real property tax assessment and exemptions, tobacco taxes, and DOA's health insurance benefits. Audits in progress include DOC overtime, nonprofit limited gaming, DPW inventory of parts, supplies, and materials, and Guam Regional Transit Authority's non-appropriated funds. GITA's qualifying certificates, Gov Guam fuel card use and management, and DOA special revenue funds. And I know that there was a lot of discussion on that yesterday at Department of Administration's budget hearing. 3 procurement appeals cases remain open in 2018. In closing, I would like to thank the people of Guam for the privilege, honor, trust, and confidence they have given me these nearly 18 years as your public auditor. It has been a wonderful and challenging journey into uncharted waters that I will always treasure. Over these years, accountability and transparency have become the expectation rather than the exception. As my parting request, I humbly ask the legislature fully fund OPA. And we're here now to answer any questions you may have.
At the risk of sounding deja vu, this is something that we talked about 10 years ago. This is something we talked about 10 years ago. Remember when you were asking for unclassified service, and you insisted that as an elected office, you had a right to be able to name your management team, and they were going to be in the class, and you wanted the entire office unclassified, so you could name the salaries. And at that time, 10 years ago, I told you you would have this problem, that I wanted to make sure that the next auditor, public auditor, would be able to have the institutional knowledge of a staff, that the staff shouldn't all go just because the public auditor did. That was the reason why I cautioned against unclassified service. You went around me, you got somebody else to introduce legislation to create the unclassified positions in your office, and now you want an additional $240,000 to create the classified service with them in it, in the salaries that they're at in unclassified salaries. You can't have it both ways.
And I didn't have it both ways, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect. I did not have it both ways. I went to court. It was the policy decision of the court to revert everybody to classified. Everybody up until 2006 was unclassified. It's kind of either all or none. I was taken to court by the Department of Administration. I lost that battle, and since 2006, for 10 years, we have struggled under that area. That was a policy call. No one wanted to make it unclassified, and so I accepted that position. No,
you wanted, though the court ordered the classified service, that they had to be in the classified service, you wanted a management team that you could name the salaries outside of the salary schedule that was that was in effect at the time. And I kept telling you, they have to be in the classified service so that they could be protected and the institutional knowledge would be protected.
And it was a struggle, if I may, sir. In 2014, this legislature kept on going back and forth as to whether or not we had the authority to even do my own management study, in those positions. One year you said yes, the next year you said no, and the next year you said yes. You were the one on the third time said yes, and that's when in 2013 we went out. We went out and we had that study, all right?
The
and
study
that
was
study
done,
took,
but they didn't need to be unclassified.
The salaries under the present system would not have allowed any of these people to stay. I
understand, but I'm just saying the study should have, if you had presented it to whoever was doing the study, be able to you could have justified the salaries that were going to be paid. Now we're having to find an additional $250,000 so that we can keep 3 unclassified people that are going to move from the unclassified service into the classified system directly?
I've struggled with this. I've struggled to figure out what would be the best way to keep these people. You know.
I understand, and I would love to keep them. And I'm just saying, and the classified service does not allow for a person going from unclassified into the classified service without 180 days lapsing, and that they would have to go to a classified salary with a classified salary. And I'm sure that it's considerably less than what they're paying.
Yes.
And that was the reason why
it is considerably less. And that decision will be made by the next public auditor.
I understand, and I'm just saying that was the reason why I wanted them within the classified service, and you justified it, and would have had to justify their salaries within the classified service, not I'm going to have a study for everybody else, and for my 3 managers, I'm going to have a different salary above that. This has been...
The final passage was not what we wanted. As I mentioned earlier, half a loaf was better than no loaf at all. Something was better than nothing. The study that was presented and the final study that was approved by Department of Administration required a lot of give and take. That took over a year of back and forth between OPA and DOA. We got rid of certain positions. We had to modify certain other ones. It was a lot of give and take. So the study that was originally presented was not the final study that was approved by DOA. And as I said in last year's budget, half a loaf was better than no loaf at all.
And this is not a transitional budget that you're proposing. You're proposing a budget that's going to be $250,000 more, and then leave the next auditor with the ability to be able to name his or her transition management team in the classified service on top of this amount.
And then again, that's surely going to be up to the discretion. If they want to keep some of the people in the unclassified, that's their his or her discretion. We're talking not even $250,000. We're not even $250,000. That is barely, 1/10, not even 1/100%. And if you want to, pardon the expression, debate that $225,000, I will do the best to respond to you.
I'm not going to debate it with you. I'm just telling you, we had this discussion 10 years ago about the reason why I didn't want...
Exactly, and I capitulated because that was what everybody said. Convert everybody to classified. The moment I did, 2 people left immediately because they did not want to get the salaries. And there was a time we went down to 9 people because everybody kept on leaving. I built this, I went from 0 to 9, up to 18, back to 9, and it has been a struggle for the last 10 years. It has been a continuous struggle until a couple of years ago. And this is the challenge I have been faced with.
And so the challenge is now ours to increase the operating cost of the office by $240,000.
And if you don't think this office is worthy of this, then that's fine. That's what the next public auditor will have to deal with.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Hi, could I just ask, so there are 3 vacancies right now, is that all? There are none?
There are vacancies, but they're not funded.
Oh, okay. 3 vacant positions, 3, okay. All right, could you just explain on the contracts? There are several contracts that are, either they look new or in FY19 they weren't, according to this table, funded in FY18?
No, all the contracts have been there before. What?
All right, I'm looking at Schedule B.
We have a contract for the attorneys. We have 3 contracts for their 3 attorneys.
It says OPA Legal Services FY19 7,500, but FY18 says 0. So there's a variance increase of 7,500. I'm looking at Schedule B contractual, revised.
Schedule B contractual.
And this whole table shows as if, yeah, these are new, not in 2018, but in 2019. So legal services, financial audit,
Okay.
publications.
What happened, we did have, I'm not sure, we've always periodically had areas of legal service. The amount that was authorized in 2018, we had to make a number of adjustments. For example, in a cost-cutting measure, we've been paying for the annual audit of the non-appropriated funds of the mayors. Okay, we did not do that in in this current year in order to save some money. And then what I spoke with the contracted auditor is next year if we can do that as a 2-year audit, and still retain the price. That's why this was zeroed out, all right, because of what we had. What has happened to us, before it would take 6 months to recruit, and then when we got our authority in 2017, the lapses that were created were eaten up because we were able to fill the positions faster, because each year we would lose somebody and then that lapses would help us, and then we didn't utilize the entire appropriation. This year in 2017 and in 2018 we were fully funded and we exhausted all of our lapses. And so we made adjustments to these areas because of personnel took up the bulk of it, leaving very little for contractual.
All right, so what are the legal services then so were they provided in FY18 or not?
They are, right now, legal services are dependent upon the number of procurement appeals. And they will either go up or down depending on how many appeals. And this is an area, it's really difficult to accurately project.
Yes.
because of the appeals.
All right, so but then just bear with me. Just why is it zeroed out in 2018? You're able to pay it right now with other funds?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And is that, so if you don't mind, the audit, then the 30,000 represents the mayor's council?
Yes.
Okay. And then the publications well, that's just a small amount. The rest are, what about the last one, the membership dues? These were not paid in 2018, or you used something
No, what
else?
happened was POSI went from $100 New Zealand to 5,000 New Zealand, and will continue to increase. That was delayed earlier. There was some pushback from the members of the Congress. So this year, come June 30th, it will be 5,000 New Zealand from $100 New Zealand.
I see. Okay, and if the 3 positions are not funded, the unclassified positions, what happens? Are there 3 vacant positions now that are funded? Or tell me that one more time. Yeah, what happens with the classified positions then?
If you were to look at our staffing pattern, on page,
It's right the next page, right?
yes.
Right after
You've got
Schedule B.
We've got 1, 2, 3 positions still listed because we've always had the 21 positions from the get-go.
Right.
Okay, there are 3 positions there, but they're not funded because we've utilized all of the remaining positions.
Okay.
So what's going to happen? Again, it will be up to the next public auditor to decide, his or her management team.
Unclassified.
Yes.
All right. So are there any classified vacancies? Are
The
these?
3 that we've mentioned in here, the
right.
accountability auditor 2s,
Okay.
yeah,
So there are 3,
there are 3.
and those remain vacant right now?
Yes, because we don't have the funding for
I
it.
see. Okay. But the FY19 proposal proposes to fund those 3 positions?
Not this proposal. The 1.6
Okay.
million does not. That's
right.
why I said in the beginning, this
That's
is a
what your letter is asking? Okay.
That's the additional amount we're asking.
I think you should probably make it clear to them that what your plan is to use those 3 vacant classified positions, move the 3 unclassifieds into those, and augment the salaries to keep the salary that they're currently at, right?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's correct. In other words, an announcement went out today and that process will go through, be reviewed, how many days for applicants? 1 month. 1 month, and then our HR consultant will review it, and then it will be turned over to the Department of Administration, and then the decision will be up to the next public auditor whether or not to convert from unclassified to classified at whatever level it is.
I'm sorry. Just, I want to make sure I understand that. An announcement went out today for 3 classified vacancies? 2? Okay. So 2 vacancies, so for positions, to fill 3 positions, an announcement went out today. But what do you mean by and so that will be filled by the next public auditor, you're saying? Selected, all right.
The selection.
All right, and what do you mean by the conversion?
Well,
those will still be classified?
Those are part of the new classification plan that was approved by Department of Administration.
Okay, yes.
And that was the plan. The grade levels were adjusted downward. They were not what we had proposed. And so those are the 3 positions that were announced today. And that's, that's, again, the selection process will take some time.
All right.
People have to apply and then be reviewed and determined qualified.
All right, but funding for those 3 classified positions is not included. In the FY19 proposal, it's 0.
Correct.
But, okay, so your letter addresses
Yes.
how to fund those 3. Okay,
Yes.
got it. All right, and then one more thing is, could you just please give us a very general, when can we expect these 2018 audits that are still pending? It says, you have a list here in your letter.
Senator,
I just wanna
with
know
all
in
due
case-
respect, I don't like to, because there's
let me rephrase my question then. Can we expect any of these before we're expected to propose to have a budget? Because maybe, these audits will help us.
I think the gaming, I'm sorry, not the gaming, the GITA audit, right? The GITA audit will likely be done. We've really just started, for example, the special funds. Tirza has been designated to do the special funds audit. We just wrapped up the real property tax audit. So, so I don't think so that will be done by the time the budget hearing is concluded sometime in August, September.
Yes.
I don't. Only the
earlier.
GITA one likely will be done. And the
What about the limited gaming? Are you almost done with that?
Possibly the
Yes.
gaming,
Okay.
and possibly the non-appropriated funds of the Guam Mass Transit, Guam Regional Transit Authority. Those 3 likely within the next quarter.
What is the DOA Special Revenue Fund audit? What is that? Is that a regular audit, or is this something unique?
We did an audit on that many years ago. In fact, Vince was the one where we identified all the different funds. And the concern we have also, to address the concern of the legislature, how much money has been transferred out from these special revenue funds into the general fund. Because right now they're listed as due to, due froms. Most of them don't have cash.
Yes. And so, I don't know, were you watching yesterday's hearing with the Department of Administration? That was the big topic.
Yes.
And
that's where part of the surplus is coming from today for 2017.
Yes.
Is the transfer.
Because they were able to use special fund
Yes.
revenue. All right. That's what I wanted to ask you also. Okay.
Yes.
So they promised to give us a list of all the funds that had been transferred in the last few years. I'm not sure how far they were going to go back. I think I asked for 4 at the minimum, maybe 8 years of that kind of occurrence, and then which ones had been written off by subsequent bookkeeping. Right?
Yes.
And so how will the audit that you're doing differ from their list? Will it just pretty much verify that type of information or something additional?
I was not aware you had asked that, but this was already on our plan.
Okay.
And this was already on
Okay.
our plan to do this.
That's a great
because
idea.
Yeah. So it may either confirm but
Okay.
now that we know that they're
Well, that
planning
should
to
help
do that.
jumpstart the information that you...
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I want to thank you for all your work. And it's bittersweet for, I think, us at People of Guam to lose you as public auditor with all the work that you've done. And thanks to your team. And thank you very much for today's
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. I've certainly enjoyed the interaction that we've had with your office. I think your staff has always been very receptive and very professional. And I note in your submission on productivity, you cite some factors that affect the productivity, and one was the salaries, obviously, and the ability to retain and recruit. But it has gotten better, though, since 2016, though, in terms of the turnover rate, correct?
Yes, people are staying longer, so that's
a
the
good
news.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
the good news, and we don't have to start all over. So that has been a good thing.
Okay, and then, we always note too that one of the issues that a lot of the agencies have discussed was the mandates that are placed on them and the added responsibilities. So a lot of the efficiencies just has to do with managing the workload and the additional responsibilities that are placed on you for the most part, correct?
Well, one of the things that we instituted, and it was really at their request, was teammate. Our working papers are now electronic, and that has, you go through a year of learning, and then the efficiencies now are starting to come forward. And so we've actually, PASI has actually lauded us because we were the first to use teammate for performance audits. Most of the time, teammate is used for financial audits, and so we had sent a couple of people back to help others try to learn how to do it for performance audits.
The one thing that a lot of us are trying to understand too is when the public auditor uncovers a lot of discrepancies that are occurring within the government in terms of how monies are spent or how things are not appropriately spent or allocated. We're always curious about what that next step is, because we understand that you don't have the ability to indict or press charges. So can you discuss just briefly for the public how you interface with, say, the law enforcement side that then takes your work product and makes a case out of it to enforce compliance with laws that perhaps were not adhered to?
When we did the DPW heavy equipment audit, there were a number of allegations, and I guess, and I know that both the speaker as well as the vice speaker know, we did meet with the AG's office in that area, and more than a year ago. And of course, as you know, the burden of proof in a criminal area is much higher than the burden of proof in an audit. Okay, there certainly were elements of it, but proving it. And my own hotline was ringing off. We had a number of people who said yes, yes, but when we would ask them if you would be willing to identify themselves, many of them said, no, 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 I'm working here, I don't want to say anything. And so that was the environment we were working with. And some of the names that we got, we bounced it off with the AG investigator. It's been turned over, I don't know. About 6 or 8 years ago, we did an audit at the request of the Attorney General on GFD. We secluded that audit for a whole year. We didn't even release it. We just numbered it and we didn't even release it. Then when we went back to the Attorney General's office, are you going to do something? They said yes, 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 but I said, can we release the audit? They did, but nothing ever happened. So to be honest with you, we haven't had as much interaction with the AG's office because that type of allegation is very, very difficult to prove. You have the elements, you have weak controls. We're doing this, for example, right now in the inventory of DPW. We see that. There are no cameras on the inventory. People could easily walk out with some of it, but again, it's hard to prove. We've had hotline tips, again, but as one FBI director said, you cannot chase rabbits. You cannot chase rabbits. You got to know who, what, where, when, and how in order to be able to prove. And so that has been really the difficulty, because I think, unfortunately, people sometimes turn a blind eye away from it.
And I think that's been a lot of the disappointment with the way that the different roles play out is people would want to cooperate and facilitate. We all want a good, clean government. And we've seen so much evidence of an unclean, corrupt government of late. And, the hope is that with the powers of the OPA's office and the powers of the AG's office and the corroboration of the government workers and all those affected, that, we can somehow have a synergy that is a little more cause and effect, where one's efforts translate into another's efforts, and then there's justice, and that's just my utopian vision for one day, very, very soon, because it's quite frustrating as a government.
And a saying that I often remind my staff: evil prevails when good people do nothing. Evil prevails when good people do nothing.
But I do want to say thank you very much, most sincerely. You've been a very professional person to work with, and your staff has been quite accommodating. So I just want to say Sizus Maasi.
Well, thank you. I really have. They've developed. These two ladies, these three people here, have been with us, with OPA more than 10 years, and they've really blossomed. They all started as UOG fresh graduates, all as auditor ones in the beginning. And given time, this is the kind of professionalism that is starting to emerge throughout the government, and these three right here are representative of that.
Could I just ask one more question on the special funds? Can the government restrict the use of special funds? We've been trying, apparently that's not worked. Can we put them into separate bank accounts? Does that help us, or do you have any recommendations in that regard? Is it really an accounting principle that they can transfer in and out of these special funds at will?
You have to look at how the process works, and like what happened at the Guam, at CLTC. The money comes into the treasurer of Guam. It's debit, cash, credit, due to, meaning the general fund received the cash due to. So when the due to is recorded, meaning the general fund owes Fund X. Fund X then reports due from. Debit due from, credit revenue. The question now, is it the revenue on the special fund, or is it the revenue on the general fund? What happens here, and we have to go back, what's causing this root cause? Why are we doing this? It's because we have a deficit. The deficit is over $100 million. The deficit might be lower than that today, from 80 to 100, but it's still a deficit. That is a cash deficit. We overspent to the tune of 80 to 100 million dollars on top of the current.
But when the legislature tries to lock the funds up with a special funding language, that's why I'm asking you your recommendation is, have you seen, does OPA, for example, have its own bank accounts where the money's transferred and it's no longer able to be taken out and used by the general fund?
Yes.
And isn't that how we've tried to set up, for example, the tax refund fund?
Yes,
and isn't
which
that why
was
we
really
went to
never
court
funded from the get-go.
Yes, but I'm sure you've seen the attempts to do very similar things. So I guess I'm asking you, what have you seen? which types of funds and what kind of language has been used that has put these funds and where they're not able to be? Is it a separate bank account? Is that the key, or is it a separate, what?
Well,
Or really
That's
is it
an-
at the total discretion?
that's an area we're going to need to really explore and ask other auditors, ask GASB what can be done, because it's a situation, pardon the expression, damned if you do, damned if you don't, okay? And so I fully understand that situation, and maybe this is where we're going to have to go to GASB to find out, can it still stay there or not, but the accounting principle is, what is the likelihood of the general fund paying back that monies?
Yes, but I want to address it before it gets to that point. I feel like the use of special funds should, if we don't give that discretion to Department of Administration or anyone else, then that has to be according to the law. That there is no discretion. When it says deposit this money into the tax refund account, it has to go there. And it obviously goes there in some cases, and in some cases it doesn't.
Let me give you an example. In the budget law this year, OPA was exempted from holdbacks by the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. I got a letter from the Department of Administration, and I said, technically, you're not allowed to do that. You cannot hold back. I said, I know that, but I don't have the cash to pay you, so what am I going to do? Yeah. So if I don't have the cash to pay you, I'm holding back anyway. And so they allotted, $20,000 holdback in our 2018 budget, because they said, we've got to manage the cash. So,
Let me ask you this then. After they've given you the money, the cash, you put it in a separate bank account? Is Department of Administration able to go in and take that money and spend it?
no, once it's transferred over.
All right, thank you.
There was one other thing in the original budget request, $60,264 in special pay related to certification pay for accountants. What's that?
That's the certification pay. It's always listed what is your base salary, then your certification. What I found out afterwards is the certification pay does get adjusted. So let's just say $50,000 is your base pay, and you have a 10% certification. You'll get your pay then becomes $55,000. Then let's say you get an increment, and again for rounding purposes, let's just say it's $55,000. Then your certification pay becomes $5,500, and it does not stay at $5,000. I went back and forth with DOA and the Attorney General, and the way the language is, it's the base salary. So if you get an increase in your base salary, your certification pay does adjust accordingly.
And
that
the certification pay continues. That's
Throughout.
a completely new salary.
correct.
And are you doing what the AG did last year? And
Only one certification pay per person. So right now, UCA has the 15%, Llewellyn has the 10%. We have one CFE has the 10%, the other CPA has the 15%. So if these people get an adjustment in their salary, the 10% or the 15% will adjust accordingly based on that increased base salary.
And for the office with the 10 employees that you have, or whatever number you have, you need $60,000 for the certification or pay, or is that's in the event somebody else gets
that's already funded. That's already funded. That's already in our Yeah, that's, if you turn to the schedule, we're talking 60,264 is the certification pay for 6 individuals.
Okay. I have nothing further. We stand in recess until...
Mr. Speaker, if I just may say, you and I both are very passionate. And I'll miss this exchange. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We stand in recess until 3 o'clock. 3:30 for the Office of the Attorney General.